Elon Musk holding a live chat on his social media platform last night, X, with former President Trump. But the event was marred by some technical difficulties, and Steve Kovach joins us now with some of the details on that.
Yeah, and that was the real story, Andrew, that Spaces, that's the live broadcasting feature on X, just completely collapsed. So let me kind of explain what happened here. Minutes before the 8 p.m. launch time for this conversation, Trump posted a link to the X Spaces, and there were just errors for people getting in for several minutes. Musk eventually tweeted that it was a DDoS attack, which means basically attackers flooding the site with fake traffic in order to take it down, also claiming he tested it with 8 million concurrent listeners before the event. But I would just note that the rest of X was working fine outside of that one X space. And it finally started around 8:40 or so, about 40 minutes late. Here's Musk explaining the delay on the space last night.
Hello, everyone. My apologies for the late start. We unfortunately had a massive distributed denial of service attack against our servers and saturated all of our data lines, like basically hundreds of gigabits of data were saturated. We think we've overcome most of that, and so it's now time to proceed. But as this massive attack illustrates, there's a lot of opposition to people just hearing what President Trump has to say, and but I'm honored to have this conversation. I want to emphasize it's a conversation.
So look, maybe that's what happened, but it's also just as likely Spaces just kind of crashed like it did with the Ron DeSantis campaign launch that failed last year. The first question that Musk did once things got going about, he asked Trump about the assassination, and Trump spent about 20 minutes answering that one. At one point during the conversation, by the way, it lasted over 2 hours, Musk floated working on a commission evaluating government spending in a potential second Trump term. Overall, it was kind of like a little mini Trump rally on your iPhone that lasted again over 2 hours. So look, the day after, we should be asking ourselves, what do Trump and Musk necessarily get out of this? On the X side and the Musk side, you might get some political ads. The Trump campaign appears to have paid to promote the conversation on Spaces last night. For Trump, it's not quite as clear, not necessarily speaking to the voters in swing states and so forth, that he needs to focus on, or at least people in his party have been saying he needs to focus on. So I think that's where the conversation really takes us. What does these two men get out of the relationship they've developed with each other over the last few months?
What happens to Truth Social?
That was really interesting yesterday, too, because we saw Truth Social shares, not just on the earnings go down. It was 16 million in losses on 800,000 in revenue or something like that. That was part of it. But then Trump last night, or yesterday rather, was tweeting again. It was his first time being active on X since he posted that famous mugshot. He's been largely absent on there. So yeah, not a good look for Truth Social.
Okay, Steve, stay where you are. For more, I want to bring in Niki Christoff, CEO of strategic consulting firm Christoff and Company. She's also an alum of Salesforce, Uber, Google, and Senator John McCain's presidential campaign. She now hosts the podcast Teched Up. Good morning.
Good morning, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
So what was your reaction to last night, both the technical issues and maybe some of the content itself?
Well, on the technical issues, I think it's kind of Occam's razor. I suspect we just had too many people calling in at once. It's probably not a DDoS attack, but maybe we'll never know. My takeaway from the conversation itself was how little tech came up, considering obviously Elon Musk was the host. I was surprised that so few issues came up.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. Meaning, what do you think? I mean, it was actually interesting. We talked about it earlier. There was very little about even the economy on the call, let alone tech.
Well, the first 30 minutes was Trump recounting the assassination attempt, and then it moved on to immigration.
Did you think that anything substantive would have come out of this? Musk is not a journalist.
He's not a journalist.
No,
I just thought that
he's interested in technology.
He's interested in technology.
Fine. Yeah.
I did think, Niki, what did you make, though? There was actually an interesting moment where they were talking about fossil fuels. They were talking about electric vehicles.
Climate change. And uniquely, the president says, they actually have a debate even about, how long fossil fuels will last in the United States, for example.
Right. So that was one of the few times that they did talk about technology, because they also pivoted from that. The former president pivoted from that into talking about AI and its energy usage. But obviously for Elon Musk, he needs people to care about climate change to buy electric vehicles. President Trump was talking about nuclear change and nuclear warming.
Right.
And so he was pivoting away from one of the issues that they really don't have in common, which is that Elon Musk needs people to care about the environment, not dig, baby, dig.
I guess that's maybe a broader question. Do you think this has that kind of conversation, given the amount of people that watched it, all of our conversations about it, impacts the election in any way?
Do you think, like, suburban women, swing voters in Pennsylvania were listening on Twitter last night?
No, but
Absolutely
it's getting
not.
attention today. And look, former President Trump has not been in the headlines on a given day for a long time. So it worked in the sense that we're talking about it. It's all over the pages. And he's back in the headlines, at least for a day. We'll see how long it lasts.